The Alien Council had never been this confident about an extermination before. Before we begin, tell us where you're watching from, and subscribe for more HFY stories. High Commander Thask stood before the holographic display, his three eyes gleaming with satisfaction as he surveyed the tactical projections floating in the war chamber. The Korvax Dominion had crushed 47 civilizations in their expansion across this sector. Humanity would be the 48th. "The analysis is complete, High Commander," Sub-Commander Varric announced, his voice carrying the crisp certainty of Korvax military doctrine. "Human defensive capabilities are underwhelming." Thask's mandibles clicked in what passed for a smile among his species. Around the circular chamber, the 12 members of the Strategic Council observed in silence, their scaled forms motionless in the dim crimson light. Above them, the hologram rotated slowly, a complete tactical breakdown of humanity's military infrastructure, compiled over 6 cycles of careful observation. "Show me," Thask commanded. The display shifted, zooming into a small human colony world on the edge of what they called the Outer Rim. New Providence. Population 700,000. Strategic value minimal. Symbolic value perfect. "They rely primarily on kinetic projectile weapons," Varric continued, pulling up sensor readings from their stealth observers. "Primitive mass drivers and chemical propellants. Their vessels achieve faster than light travel through what they call slip space drives, effective but slow. Transit times are nearly double our own." "Their shield technology?" Thask asked, though he already knew the answer. "Electromagnetic barriers only. No plasma diffusion, no quantum displacement. Our weapons will cut through them like they aren't there." Varric's confidence was absolute. "High Commander, their largest warship mass is barely 3 million tons. Our dreadnoughts are 5 times that size." Thask studied the rotating image of a human vessel. The UNS Resolute, their records identified it as. Blocky, utilitarian, covered in sensor arrays and weapon batteries that looked almost comically oversized for its frame. It looked like something built by a species still learning the basics of void warfare. "Tactical doctrine?" he pressed. "Defensive," Varric said immediately. "Humans favor fallback positions, layered defense networks, and defensive fortifications. They almost never initiate aggression. Their strategy appears to be survive first, counterattack second. It's cautious, predictable." One of the council members, Science Arbiter Krell, leaned forward. "High Commander, their communication patterns suggest a highly individualized command structure. Each ship operates with significant autonomy. There's minimal real-time coordination between vessels." Thask's mandibles clicked again. Individualism, the fatal flaw of so many lesser species. The Korvax fought as one mind, one will, one perfectly synchronized instrument of conquest. Humans fought as scattered individuals, each captain making their own decisions, creating chaos in their own ranks. "Time to victory?" Thask asked. 3 standard days, High Commander," Varric replied without hesitation. "First day, orbital bombardment of defensive satellites. Second day, elimination of system defense fleet. Third day, acceptance of surrender terms." The projection supported his assessment. Every simulation, every tactical model, every strategic analysis pointed to the same outcome. The Korvax Armada would arrive, demonstrate overwhelming superiority, and humanity would bow, or burn. Thask swept his gaze across the council. "Recommendation? Begin the operation," Krell said. "New Providence is isolated enough that human reinforcements cannot arrive in time. We take the colony, secure the system, and present their government with a choice. Submit to Dominion rule or watch their worlds fall one by one." "The humans will break quickly," another council member added. "Species with such loose command structures always do. Panic spreads faster than coordination." Thask nodded slowly. 47 victories, 47 species that had underestimated Korvax military precision. Humanity would learn the same lesson. "Assemble the Third Fleet," he commanded. 16 dreadnoughts, 42 cruisers, full support elements. We'll show them the futility of resistance. "When do we depart, High Commander?" "Immediately." Thask turned toward the chamber's viewport, where the stars burned cold and distant. "I want human territory breached within 1 cycle. I want New Providence blockaded within 2. And I want their surrender within 3. The council dispersed with military efficiency, each member moving to their respective duties. Only Varric remained, studying the holographic display with the intensity of a true tactical officer. "Something troubles you, Sub-Commander?" Thask asked. Varric hesitated, a rare thing for a Korvax officer. "The humans, High Commander, when we transmitted our warning to New Providence, informing them of our arrival and their impending submission." "Yes?" "They didn't evacuate. Not a single civilian transport left the planet. Their military assets remained in standard patrol formation. It was as if—" He paused, searching for the right words. "As if they weren't concerned." Thask felt a flicker of something unfamiliar. Not doubt. Korvax commanders didn't doubt, but curiosity. Perhaps they simply don't understand the gravity of their situation. They're young, Varric, barely 300 years in the void. They don't know what real war looks like. Perhaps, Varric agreed, though his voice carried a note of uncertainty. Thask dismissed it. 47 victories. The pattern was clear. Humanity would be no different. The Third Fleet departed the Korvax staging ground 6 hours later, a magnificent display of military power. 16 dreadnoughts formed the core, each one a 2-kilometer-long cathedral of weapons and armor. Around them, cruisers and destroyers moved in perfect formation, a swarm of death arranged with mathematical precision. High Commander Thask stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Unbroken Will, and watched the stars stretch into lines as they entered faster-than-light transit. 3 days, he thought. 3 days to break humanity's spirit. 3 days to add another victory to the Dominion's eternal record. Behind him, unseen, one of the sensor technicians frowned at her console. The passive monitoring arrays had detected something odd, a brief pulse of encrypted data emanating from human space, tightly focused and impossibly fast. She almost reported it. But the High Commander was already committed to the operation, and the Third Fleet was already in transit. What difference could one data pulse make? She returned her attention to her duties and said nothing. The fleet jumped toward New Providence, carrying with them their perfect plan, their unshakable confidence, and their absolute certainty of victory. Human space waited in silence. The Third Fleet emerged from faster-than-light transit at the edge of the New Providence system like a storm manifesting from nothing. 16 dreadnoughts materialized in perfect formation, their weapon batteries already charging, their shields already active. Around them, the smaller vessels spread into assault configuration, a textbook Korvax battle deployment that had shattered defense lines across a dozen sectors. High Commander Thask watched the tactical display with satisfaction. "Status report." "All vessels nominal, High Commander," Varric responded crisply. "Human defensive satellites detected, marking targets now." Red icons bloomed across the hologram. Crude early warning buoys and kinetic weapon platforms scattered throughout the outer system. "Defense fleet positioned near the colony world. 7 vessels. Composition matches our intelligence. 3 cruisers, 4 destroyers." 7 ships, Thask repeated, his mandibles clicking with amusement. "They sent 7 ships to face our armada. Perhaps that's all they have in range." "High Commander." "Then they're already defeated." Thask gestured toward the forward view screen. "Begin the operation. Eliminate the satellites first. Let them watch their defenses crumble before we engage their fleet." The Third Fleet advanced, weapon systems cycling to full power. Plasma batteries, the pride of Korvax military engineering, began their firing sequences. The satellites wouldn't even see the attack coming. But as the first volley launched, something unexpected happened. The human satellites moved. Not much, not with any particular grace, but they moved, adjusting their positions just enough that the plasma bursts sailed past them, dissipating harmlessly into the void. Varric's head snapped toward his console. "High Commander, the satellites repositioned. They detected our targeting solutions." "Impossible," Thask said automatically. "Our plasma batteries cycle faster than their sensors can process. Reset targeting and fire again." The second volley achieved the same result. The satellites shifted, rotated, or accelerated, each one moving just enough to avoid destruction. 8 satellites, 8 targets, 8 misses. "High Commander," one of the weapon officers called out, his voice tight. "They're transmitting. Compressed data burst between all defensive assets. Extremely tight beam, nearly impossible to intercept." Thask felt that flicker again, not quite unease, but close. They're coordinating, sharing targeting data, predictable defensive behavior. Adjust firing pattern to saturation mode. I want overlapping fields of fire. They can't dodge what they can't escape. The third volley was massive. Dozens of plasma bursts creating an inescapable net of destruction. This time, 6 satellites disappeared in brilliant flashes of light, but 2 survived, and they shouldn't have. "Damage assessment," Thask demanded. 6 satellites destroyed, Varric confirmed. 2 remain operational. High Commander, they positioned themselves in the exact gaps in our firing solution. Mathematical precision. Then they got lucky. Eliminate them and advance on the defense fleet. The human ships hung in space near New Providence like patient sentinels. Even through the tactical display, Thask could see how small they were compared to his dreadnoughts. The largest of them, that same UNS Resolute from the intelligence briefings, was barely a tenth the mass of the Unbroken Will. "Human vessels are powering weapons," Varric reported. "Missile batteries, mass drivers, and some kind of directed energy system we don't have cataloged." "Let them fire," Thask said. "Our shields will absorb whatever primitive weapons The human fleet opened fire. Not wildly, not desperately. With calculated precision, each ship releasing its payload in perfect sequence. Missiles streaked across the void. Hundreds of them, their trajectories weaving and shifting as they accelerated toward the Korvax formation. "Point defense," Thask ordered calmly. "Eliminate the missiles." The Korvax fleet's automated defense systems engaged, tracking and destroying the incoming projectiles with ruthless efficiency. 90% of the missiles died before reaching their targets. The remaining 10% impacted shields and exploded, powerful but insufficient to penetrate Korvax defensive technology. "Minimal damage," Varric reported. 3 cruisers report shield degradation, already regenerating. "Their weapons are ineffective, High Commander." "Then we advance. Battle formation, Theta 7. Prepare to demonstrate overwhelming—" "High Commander!" The sensor officer's voice cracked with alarm. "The human vessels are retreating. They're falling back toward the planet." Thask watched as the 7 human ships broke formation and began a staggered withdrawal, each one accelerating away from the advancing Korvax fleet. It looked exactly like what the intelligence briefings had predicted: defensive doctrine, fallback positions, predictable behavior. "They're running," Thask said with satisfaction. "Pursue and destroy, but don't let them establish a defensive line near the planet." The third fleet surged forward, closing the distance with mechanical precision. The human ships continued their retreat, occasionally firing missiles that accomplished nothing except draining their own ammunition reserves. It was going exactly according to plan, except for one detail that Thask's tactical officers were only beginning to notice. "High Commander," Varric said slowly, studying his console with growing confusion. "The human ships are still transmitting. Constant data exchange between all vessels. Bandwidth is significant." "They're panicking," Thask said dismissively, "sharing distress signals, requesting reinforcements, standard behavior for a defeated force." "Respectfully, High Commander, the transmission patterns are too structured for panic. It's more like like they're running analysis protocols. Analysis of what? Their own defeat? Thask watched the human ships flee before his armada. Continue pursuit. I want them disabled, not destroyed. They'll serve as examples to the rest of humanity. The chase continued for another 20 minutes. The human fleet led the Korvax deeper into the system, closer to New Providence. Every few minutes they would turn and fire another volley, missiles, railgun rounds, energy beams, all of which were systematically defeated by Korvax point defense and shields. It should have been satisfying. It should have been the inevitable march toward victory. But something was wrong. Thask couldn't identify what exactly. The humans were losing. They were retreating. They were taking damage. Everything was proceeding as predicted. And yet... "Hi, Commander," the sensor officer called out. "Human data transmissions just spiked. All 7 vessels simultaneously." On the tactical display, the human ships suddenly broke their retreat pattern. Instead of continuing their flight, they scattered, each vessel moving to a different vector, forcing the Korvax fleet to divide its attention across multiple targets. "They're attempting to split our formation," Varric observed. "Classic desperation tactic. Maintain pursuit of the Resolute. It's their flagship. The others will surrender once we eliminate their command vessel." The Unbroken Will and 5 other dreadnoughts adjusted course, bearing down on the human cruiser. At this range, there was no escape. The Resolute was minutes away from being overwhelmed. Then it fired. Not missiles this time, something else. A directed beam of concentrated particles that struck the Unbroken Will's forward shield at a precise 43-degree angle. The shield didn't fail, but it flickered, just for an instant, just enough to be noticed. "What was that?" Thask demanded. "Unknown weapon type," the defensive systems officer reported, his voice uncertain. "Some kind of focused particle stream. It shouldn't have affected our shields at all. The energy output was minimal, but it hit the exact resonance frequency of our shield harmonics." "Coincidence," Thask said. "Yes, High Commander. Must be." The Resolute fired again. Same weapon, different angle. This time 37 degrees. The shield flickered again, more noticeably. "That's not coincidence," Varric said quietly. "They're testing our defenses." Before Thask could respond, all 7 human vessels fired simultaneously. Each beam struck a different Korvax ship. Each beam hit at a different angle. And each shield flickered, some more than others, as the weapons found and exploited microscopic variations in defensive field harmonics. "High Commander," the science officer called out, his voice tight with something that might have been fear. "They're not fighting us. They're learning us. Explain." Every engagement, every weapon exchange, every sensor reading, they're feeding it all into some kind of central analysis system. The data transmissions aren't panic. They're not coordination. They're information sharing. Each ship learns from what every other ship sees. Thask stared at the tactical display, watching the human vessels move with increasing confidence. Their evasion patterns were becoming more efficient. Their weapons targeting was becoming more precise. Their retreat had slowed, then stopped. Now they were advancing. "How is this possible?" Thask asked, though he wasn't sure he wanted to know the answer. Varric pulled up detailed sensor logs, his 3 eyes widening as he processed the data. "High Commander, at the start of engagement, human weapon accuracy was 62%. It's now 94%. Their evasion efficiency has improved by 40%. Their shield modulation is now perfectly tuned to deflect our plasma bursts, and this improvement happened in under 30 minutes of combat." "They're adapting," Thask said, the word bitter in his mouth. "Not just adapting, High Commander. They're evolving, in real time. Every tactic we use, every weapon we fire, every maneuver we execute, it goes into their database, and they never make the same mistake twice." On the view screen, the UNS Resolute turned to face the Unbroken Will directly. Its weapons were charging, its shields were configured in a pattern specifically designed to counter Korvax plasma technology. And from its communication array, a message arrived in flawless Korvax military protocol. "Korvax 3rd Fleet, This is Captain Sarah Chen of the United Nations ship Resolute. Combat learning protocols are now at 73% completion. Your tactical patterns have been analyzed and cataloged. Your weapon systems are now predictable. Your defensive capabilities are now understood. A pause. You wanted a quick victory, High Commander. So did we. Thank you for the education. Thask felt something he hadn't experienced in 47 conquests. Uncertainty. And the battle had only just begun. High Commander Thask stared at the tactical display, watching patterns he didn't recognize emerging in the human fleet's movements. His mandibles locked tight, a Korvax stress response he'd trained himself to suppress decades ago. "All vessels, attack formation Delta 9, he commanded, his voice steady despite the creeping wrongness of the situation. "Concentrated fire on the Resolute. Overwhelming force. End this now." 6 dreadnoughts pivoted in perfect synchronization, their plasma batteries cycling to maximum output. This wasn't a probing attack or a tactical maneuver. This was the full might of Korvax military doctrine. Enough firepower to glass a small moon, focused on a single human cruiser. The plasma bursts launched in a cascading wave of superheated death. The Resolute didn't dodge. It didn't need to. Its shields reconfigured mid-flight, the electromagnetic barriers shifting through a dozen different modulation frequencies in less than 3 seconds. Each burst of Korvax plasma struck the shields at precisely the wrong harmonic, the energy diffusing, scattering, bleeding away into space as waste heat. 97% of the barrage was neutralized. The remaining 3% splashed against the Resolute's hull, scarring armor but causing no critical damage. "Impossible," Varric breathed. "Those shield modulations, they're cycling through frequencies we haven't even fired at yet. They're predicting our next targeting solution." "Then switch to kinetic bombardment," Thask snapped. "Railguns, physical projectiles, they can't predict the trajectory of—" The human fleet moved before the order was completed. All 7 vessels scattered into a pattern that placed each one in the optimal position to intercept railgun fire meant for the others. When the Korvax weapons fired, the humans were already elsewhere, not fleeing but repositioning with mathematical precision. And then they returned fire. The human weapons had changed. The missiles now moved in coordinated swarms, each projectile communicating with the others, adjusting trajectories in real time to exploit gaps in Korvax point defense. The mass driver rounds came in staggered salvos, each time to arrive microseconds after Korvax defensive systems had committed to tracking the previous shot. The particle beams, those strange, low-energy weapons that had seemed so ineffective, now fired in perfect harmony, each beam striking a different Korvax ship at the exact resonance frequency of its shields. 3 Korvax cruisers lost their shields entirely. 2 more reported critical power fluctuations. "High Commander," the defensive systems officer's voice carried open panic. "They've mapped our entire defensive grid, every ship in the fleet. They know where our shields are weakest. They know our point defense firing sequences. They know our—" An explosion rocked the bridge as one of the Unbroken Will's secondary batteries took a direct hit. The shields had held, but the fact that the shot had penetrated close enough to cause structural shaking was horrifying. "Damage report," Thask demanded. "Minimal but High Commander. They're targeting our weapons, not our bridges. Not our engines, our weapons. They're systematically dismantling our offensive capability." Thask watched the tactical display with growing horror. The human ships moved like dancers in a choreographed performance, each one supporting the others, creating overlapping fields of fire that left no openings, no opportunities for counterattack. Every shot they fired hit something. Every maneuver they executed accomplished multiple objectives simultaneously. They weren't just fighting anymore. They were demonstrating mastery. "Subcommander Varric," Thask said quietly, "what is our current tactical assessment?" Varric stared at his console, his 3 eyes reflecting the crimson glow of warning indicators. When he spoke, his voice was hollow. High Commander, at current rates of engagement. The human learning curve will surpass our ability to adapt in approximately 14 minutes. After that point, every action we take will be perfectly countered. Every weapon we fire will be neutralized. Every maneuver will be anticipated. 14 minutes until what? Until we can't hurt them at all, but they can hurt us with impunity. A communication request flashed on Thask's console. From the Resolute. He accepted it because refusing seemed pointless now. Captain Sarah Chen appeared on the view screen. She was human, soft features, only 2 eyes, skin the color of earth. She wore a dark blue uniform with minimal ornamentation. Her expression was calm, not triumphant, not angry, just calm. "High Commander Thask," she said, her voice steady and precise. "I'm contacting you because in approximately 9 minutes, my fleet will achieve complete tactical superiority over yours. You need to understand what that means." "You're bluffing," Thask said, though even he could hear the weakness in his own voice. "I'm not." Chen gestured off-screen, and data began streaming to the Unbroken Will's computers. Thask watched his tactical officers process it, their body language growing increasingly distressed. "What you're receiving is a predictive model. It shows the next 30 minutes of engagement if we continue fighting. Every action your fleet takes, every countermaneuver, every tactical decision you're capable of making. We've already analyzed them all." The model played out on the tactical display. The Korvax fleet, proud and powerful, systematically dismantled, not destroyed, disabled. Every ship stripped of weapons, shields collapsed, engines offline. A perfect dissection performed with surgical precision. "This is propaganda," Thask said. "Computer projections based on the 17,342 individual data points we've collected since your fleet entered this system," Chen interrupted. "Every sensor sweep you've performed, every weapon you've fired, every communication you've transmitted, every maneuver you've executed. My ships have been analyzing all of it, High Commander. Learning from all of it, adapting to all of it." She leaned forward slightly. "You came here with a plan to break humanity quickly. It was a good plan, well-researched, tactically sound. It would have worked against most species in this galaxy, but not humans." "No," Chen said simply, "not humans, because we don't fight the battle in front of us, High Commander. We fight every battle that comes after. Every engagement is a lesson. Every defeat is a graduate course. Every victory is a permanent upgrade to our strategic database." On the tactical display, another Korvax cruiser lost its shields. The human destroyers were focusing fire now, working in perfect tandem, their weapons timed to exploit shield regeneration cycles that the Korvax hadn't even realized were exploitable. "You wanted to know our secret?" Chen continued. "It's simple. Every human warship is equipped with a Combat Learning Integration System, CLI for short. Every ship shares every piece of tactical data in real time. When one of us learns something, all of us learn it. When you fire at my ship, you're teaching my entire fleet. When you maneuver against the destroyer to my left, you're training all 7 of our vessels simultaneously." She paused, letting that sink in. "Your plan didn't survive contact with us because no plan survives once we learn it, and we learn very, very quickly." Thask felt his certainty crumbling. 47 victories, 47 species crushed beneath Korvax military might. None of them had been like this. None of them had turned the very act of combat into a learning opportunity. "What do you want?" he asked, the words bitter. "For you to stop," Chen said immediately. "Power down your weapons. Maintain your position. Accept that you've lost this engagement." "And if I refuse? If I order my fleet to fight to the last vessel?" Chen's expression didn't change. "Then in approximately 11 minutes, you'll have no weapons left to fight with. In 20 minutes, you'll have no shields. In 30 minutes, your engines will be disabled, and then you'll drift here helpless while I decide what to do with you. You're saying you could destroy us but choose not to?" I'm saying I don't need to destroy you to defeat you, High Commander. That's the difference between Korvac's doctrine and human strategy. You came here to demonstrate overwhelming force. We came here to demonstrate something more valuable, overwhelming competence. Behind Thask, the bridge crew watched in silence. He could feel their fear, their confusion, their dawning realization that they were facing something unprecedented. On the view screen, Chen continued, "Every battle you fight against humanity makes us stronger. Every tactic you reveal gets added to our database. Every weapon you fire teaches us how to defeat it. You can't win a war of attrition against an enemy that improves with every engagement." "Then we learn from this," Thask said desperately. "We adapt. We change our tactics and we learn those too," Chen interrupted. "High Commander, you're thinking about this like a traditional military conflict. Win some, lose some, adjust, and try again. But this isn't that kind of war. This is an educational arms race, and humanity has been building our learning infrastructure for 3 centuries. Every battle adds to our knowledge base. Every conflict makes the next one easier. Every enemy teaches us something we'll never forget." Another explosion, this time from one of the trailing dreadnoughts. Its main plasma battery had catastrophically overloaded after a human particle beam hit its power coupling at the exact moment of maximum charge. "Combat learning efficiency now at 96%, Chen said, reading from her own displays. "High Commander, your fleet is currently executing tactical pattern Sigma 42. We've already analyzed 14 different counter-responses you might attempt from this position. Shall I list them for you? Or would you prefer I demonstrate why none of them will work?" Thask looked at his command console, at the tactical display showing his mighty fleet being systematically dismantled, at the casualty reports streaming in, not from destroyed ships, but from disabled ones, their weapons torn apart with surgical precision, at the future playing out in predictive models that showed, with mathematical certainty, the complete defeat of the Third Fleet. "Science Arbiter Krell," he said quietly. "Tactical analysis. If we continue fighting, what is our probability of victory?" Krell's voice came through the communication channel, shaken and small. "0, High Commander. The humans have achieved total tactical supremacy. Every action we take accelerates our defeat. Every weapon we fire teaches them how to defeat it faster next time. The only winning move left is—" He trailed off. "Is what?" Thask demanded. "Is not to play, High Commander. The only way to prevent them from learning more about our capabilities is to stop fighting entirely." Silence filled the bridge. Outside, the human fleet maintained its positions, weapons powered but not firing, shields optimized but not aggressive, waiting, confident, patient. Chen spoke one last time. "High Commander, I know what you're thinking. You're thinking about the 47 species you've conquered before us. You're wondering how we're different, why we survived when they didn't." She leaned closer to the camera. "We survived because we remember, High Commander. Humanity never forgets a lesson. Every battle our ancestors fought, from stone spears to fusion missiles, went into our collective memory. Every victory, every defeat, every sacrifice. And now, every time someone like you decides to test us, you're not fighting 7 ships. You're fighting 3 centuries of accumulated combat knowledge, refined through warfare and encoded into every vessel in our fleet. Your plan to break us quickly failed the moment you fired your first shot, because that shot became part of our education. And humanity's education never ends." The tactical display showed it clearly now. The Korvac's Third Fleet, which had departed with such confidence, was no longer an armada. It was a classroom. And humanity had just graduated with perfect marks. High Commander Thask, victor of 47 conquests, looked at his fleet's deteriorating position and made the hardest decision of his military career. "All vessels," he said, his voice breaking slightly. "Cease fire, power down weapons, hold position." On the view screen, Captain Chen nodded once. "A wise decision, High Commander. My fleet will maintain position as well. You're free to leave this system whenever you're ready." "Just like that?" Thask asked. "You let us retreat after we invaded your territory?" "Yes," Chen said simply, "because you've already given us what we wanted." "What we—" Understanding dawned, cold and terrible. "You wanted us to attack. You wanted to learn from us." Chen's expression remained neutral. But Thask saw the truth in her eyes. "High Commander, every species that fights humanity makes us stronger. Every encounter adds to our database. You came here to break us quickly. Instead, you taught us everything we needed to know about Korvax's military doctrine." She gestured to something off-screen. "That information is already being transmitted to every human vessel in our fleet, shared with every defense installation, encoded into every tactical database. The next time we face Korvax forces, if there is a next time, we won't need 30 minutes to achieve tactical superiority. We'll need 30 seconds. Thask felt the full weight of his defeat settle over him, not just a military defeat, an educational one. They hadn't just lost this battle, they'd handed humanity the key to defeating every future Korvax attack. "Go home, High Commander," Chen said, not unkindly, "and tell your Dominion what you learned here. Tell them that humanity doesn't break. We learn, and what we learn, we never forget." The transmission ended. Thask sat in his command chair, surrounded by the quiet chaos of his broken fleet, and realized with crystalline clarity what humanity truly was. Not warriors, not conquerors, not even defenders. They were students of warfare itself, and they'd just aced their midterm exam. The Korvax Third Fleet hung in space like a wounded beast, weapons dark, shields minimal, engines idling. Around them, the 7 human vessels maintained their positions, not aggressive, not threatening, but present. Watching, recording, always recording. High Commander Thask's bridge had fallen into an oppressive silence. His officers moved mechanically through their duties, but the confidence that had defined Korvax military culture for generations was gone. In its place was something far more dangerous: doubt. "Sub-Commander Varric," Thask said quietly, "damage assessment across the fleet." Varric consulted his console, his 3 eyes moving rapidly across the data. 16 dreadnoughts, all operational but degraded, 42 cruisers, 39 still capable of combat, though 22 have lost primary weapons. Destroyer complement is at 87% effectiveness. He paused. "High Commander, we lost no ships, not a single vessel destroyed." "No," Thask said bitterly. "They made sure of that, didn't they? Dead ships can't report what happened here, but defeated ones?" He gestured at the view screen, where the UNS Resolute still faced them with calm certainty. Defeated ships carry the message. Message, High Commander? That humanity cannot be broken quickly. Cannot be broken at all, perhaps. A communication alert chimed, not from the humans, but from Korvax High Command. Thask had been dreading this moment. Fleet Command would have been monitoring the battle through the tactical relay network. They would have seen everything. He accepted the transmission. Supreme Admiral Korthus appeared on the screen, his scaled features rigid with barely controlled fury. Behind him, Thask could see the Strategic Command Center, dozens of Korvax military leaders, all watching, all waiting for explanation. "High Commander Thask," Korthus said, his voice like grinding stone. "Explain how the Third Fleet, 16 dreadnoughts and full support, failed to secure a colony world defended by 7 ships." "Supreme Admiral, the humans possess technology we did not anticipate. Their technology is inferior," Korthus snapped. "We've analyzed their vessels for 6 cycles, kinetic weapons, slow FTL, electromagnetic shields, nothing that should threaten Korvax superiority." "Their weapons aren't the threat, Supreme Admiral." Thask forced himself to meet Korthus's gaze. "Their minds are. They have a system, combat learning integration. Every ship shares combat data in real time. Every engagement trains their entire fleet simultaneously. They don't just fight, Supreme Admiral. They study, they adapt, they evolve." Behind Korthus, several Strategic Command officers exchanged glances. One of them, Science Marshal Trent, leaned forward. "High Commander, are you saying they improved during active combat?" "I'm saying they mastered us during active combat, Science Marshal. Within 30 minutes, they had analyzed every tactic we employed, predicted every maneuver we could execute, and optimized their responses to complete perfection. By the end..." Thask's mandibles locked briefly. By the end, there was no action we could take that they couldn't counter. "Impossible," Korthus said flatly. "I have 39 damaged cruisers and 73 dead officers that say otherwise, Supreme Admiral." The silence from High Command was deafening. Finally, Trent spoke again. "High Commander, transmit all tactical data from the engagement immediately. We need to analyze..." "Respectfully, Science Marshal, you need to understand what that data represents." Thask pulled up his own tactical logs, broadcasting them to High Command. Every sensor reading we took of human vessels, every weapon signature we recorded, every tactical pattern we documented, all of that is information we gave them. They learned from every scanner we pointed at them. Every shot we fired taught them how to defeat it. The act of fighting them made them stronger. The implications rippled through Strategic Command. Thask watched realization dawn on face after face. "You're saying," Korthus said slowly, "that any military action against humanity provides them with intelligence?" "I'm saying military action against humanity is military education for humanity, Supreme Admiral. They don't just defend themselves, they learn from the attack, catalog it, share it across their entire fleet network, and they never forget." Trent was already working his console, running calculations. "If their learning rate is as efficient as you describe, High Commander, then every Korvax fleet that engages them will face an enemy that already knows Korvax tactics. The first engagement would be difficult. The second would be harder. The third would last minutes," Thask finished. "Because by then, they'd have fought us twice, learned everything we know. Every strategy in our doctrine would be cataloged. Every weapon in our arsenal would be countered. Every ship design would be analyzed." "We adapt as well," Korthus said, but his voice lacked conviction. "We modify tactics, develop new weapons, which they'll learn the moment we use them," Thask interrupted. "Supreme Admiral, we came here expecting to fight a primitive species. We found something far more dangerous, a species that weaponized learning itself. They don't need to be stronger than us, they just need to be faster at improving." Another officer spoke up, her voice tight with fear. "High Command, we need to consider worst-case scenarios. If the humans share this tactical data with other species..." "They already have," Varric interjected from his station. "We detected massive data transmissions from the human vessels during and after the engagement. Tight beam, encrypted, but headed toward multiple human colonies and installations. They're distributing everything they learned about us throughout their entire defense network." Thask watched the tactical map on his display, a representation of known human space. Dozens of worlds, hundreds of installations, thousands of vessels, all about to receive detailed analysis of Korvax military capabilities. "How many ships in the human fleet?" Korthus asked quietly. "Intelligence estimates 3,000 combat-capable vessels," Trent replied, "plus civilian craft that could be converted, defensive installations, research vessels with weapons potential. And now all of them know how to fight us." The weight of that statement settled over both bridges, the Unbroken Will and Korvax High Command alike. 47 conquests, and none of them had resulted in this, a defeated fleet carrying home the knowledge of their own obsolescence. "Recommendations?" Korthus demanded. "Immediate cessation of all offensive operations against human space," Trent said without hesitation. "Supreme Admiral, we cannot afford to teach them anything more. Every battle makes them more dangerous. Every engagement makes the next one unwinnable." "You're suggesting we retreat?" The Korvax Dominion has never faced an enemy like this," Trent interrupted, his voice urgent. "Supreme Admiral, traditional military doctrine doesn't apply here. We can't overwhelm them with numbers. Each ship we send teaches their entire fleet. We can't surprise them with new tactics. They'll analyze and counter them mid-battle. We can't even observe them without giving them information." Another strategic command officer added, "Supreme Admiral, we need to consider this from an evolutionary perspective. Humanity isn't just a military threat. They're a strategic dead end. Fighting them makes them stronger, observing them makes them aware, and ignoring them might be the only option that doesn't accelerate our own defeat." Thask watched Korthus's face cycle through anger, denial, and finally, reluctant acceptance. The Supreme Admiral looked at something off-screen, then back to Thask. "High Commander, what is the current status of the human fleet?" "Holding position, Supreme Admiral. Captain Chen has stated we're free to leave at any time." "She's letting you retreat?" "She doesn't need to destroy us to defeat us," Thask said, echoing Chen's words. "We're more valuable to them alive. We carry the proof of their capabilities. We spread the message of what happens when you attack humanity expecting a quick victory." Korthus was silent for a long moment. "Return to Korvax space immediately, High Commander. All fleet elements. No further engagement with human forces under any circumstances." "Understood, Supreme Admiral." "And Thask?" Korthus leaned closer to his camera. "Your career isn't over. 47 victories still stand, but learn from this. Humanity. They fight a different kind of war than we're prepared for." The transmission ended. Thask sat in his command chair, staring at the tactical display. The human fleet was already moving, not toward them, but away, returning to patrol positions around New Providence. Their job was done. The lesson had been taught. "Subcommander Varric, prepare the fleet for transit. Course for Korvax Prime. Fastest possible speed." "High Commander." Varric hesitated. "What do we tell the crews?" "The truth," Thask said. "That we encountered a species we didn't understand. That our intelligence was incomplete. That our assumptions were wrong." He turned to face his sub-commander. "And that we survived because the humans chose to let us survive. They could have destroyed us. Instead, they educated us. Will the Dominion accept that? The Dominion will have no choice. We're not the first species to learn this lesson about humanity. But we might be the first to learn it and live to share it." The Third Fleet began its slow departure from New Providence, engines burning for the long journey home. Behind them, 7 human vessels maintained their watch, sensors still recording, learning systems still active, still teaching themselves how to be better at war than anyone who might challenge them. On the bridge of the UNS Resolute, Captain Sarah Chen watched the Korvax fleet retreat. Her tactical officer, Lieutenant Marcus Rivera, stood beside her command chair. "Captain, CLI reports complete tactical integration. All Korvax fleet patterns, weapon signatures, and strategic doctrines have been uploaded to the Human Defense Network." "Good," Chen said quietly. "How many of our vessels have received the update?" "All of them, Captain. Every ship, every station, every installation. If we encounter Korvax forces again, we won't need to relearn anything," Chen finished. "They taught us everything once. That's all we needed." Rivera glanced at the retreating alien fleet. "Do you think they'll come back?" Chen considered the question. "No, they're smarter than that. They'll analyze what happened here, realize the strategic impossibility of defeating an enemy that improves with every engagement, and they'll choose not to play." She turned to Rivera. "That's the goal, Marcus. Not to destroy our enemies, to make them understand that attacking us is educational for us and suicidal for them. And if they don't understand, then they'll learn. One way or another, they always learn." Chen pulled up the transmission logs, the massive data burst that had been sent to human space the moment the engagement concluded. Detailed analysis of Korvax vessels, weapons, tactics, psychology, command structure, everything. Thousands of data points that would make humanity incrementally stronger, incrementally more prepared, incrementally more dangerous. "Notify Fleet Command," she said. "New Providence held. Enemy retreated. 0 friendly casualties. Full tactical database acquired and distributed." "Yes, Captain." Chen looked out at the stars, at the vast darkness where other species watched and waited and calculated their own plans for human space. The Korvax had come expecting a quick victory. They'd left with a hard lesson. But they were only one empire, one fleet, one test. How many others would need to learn the same way? How many more times would humanity have to demonstrate that they didn't just fight wars, they perfected them? The answer, Chen knew, was as many times as necessary. Because humanity's greatest weapon wasn't their technology or their tactics, it was their memory. And memory, once gained, was never lost. 3 cycles later, the Korvax Strategic Command Center had transformed into something resembling an emergency session of the Dominion Council. High Commander Thask stood before the assembled leadership: Supreme Admiral Korthus, Science Marshal Trent, Defense Arbiter, Sela, and 24 sector commanders, each one studying the comprehensive battle analysis with expressions that ranged from disbelief to horror. "This is the 3rd independent verification," Trent said, his voice hollow. "Every simulation produces the same result. Against human forces employing combat learning integration, conventional Korvax doctrine has a tactical half-life of approximately 43 minutes. "Explain tactical half-life," Defense Arbiter Sela demanded. "The time it takes for 50% of our tactical advantages to become obsolete," Trent replied. "After 43 minutes of engagement, half-hour strategies are cataloged, predicted, and countered. After 86 minutes, 3/4. After 2 hours..." He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. Supreme Admiral Korthus activated the holographic display showing the New Providence engagement from multiple angles. "High Commander Thask, you stated that Captain Chen claimed humanity fights every battle that comes after. Explain." Thask stepped forward, his 3 eyes reflecting the blue glow of the tactical projections. "Supreme Admiral, humans don't view individual engagements as isolated events. Every battle is a learning opportunity that benefits their entire military structure. When we fought 7 ships, we taught 7,000. When we used our plasma batteries, we educated their entire fleet on how to defeat them. They don't fight for territory or resources or even victory in the traditional sense." "Then what do they fight for?" Sela asked. "Knowledge," Thask said simply. "They fight to learn, and what they learn, they keep forever." Korthus zoomed the display to show human vessel movements, the precise, coordinated dance that had dismantled the Third Fleet with surgical efficiency. "Intelligence reports are now coming in from other sectors. The Vryn Collective encountered a human patrol fleet near the Epsilon border. 2 Vryn cruisers attempted to force the humans out of disputed space." "And?" one of the sector commanders asked. "The engagement lasted 11 minutes. The Vryn cruisers were disabled with 0 casualties and escorted out of the sector. But here's what concerns me." Korthus pulled up a data stream. "The human vessels employed counter-tactics specifically designed for Vryn energy weapons. Weapons they had never encountered before. They used what they learned from us," Thask realized. "Korvax plasma technology shares fundamental principles with Vryn energy systems. They extrapolated from our engagement to predict Vryn capabilities." "Precisely," Trent confirmed. "And now both encounters, ours and the Vryns, are in their database. They're cross-referencing tactical data, building a comprehensive understanding of multiple species' military doctrines." The implications hung in the air like a physical weight. Sela leaned forward, her voice tight. "How many species have engaged human forces since New Providence?" Trent consulted his data. 8 confirmed encounters across 6 sectors. 3 were border disputes, 2 were piracy attempts, 1 was a territorial challenge, 1 was what appears to have been a research expedition that got too close to human installations, and 1 was... He paused, uncomfortable to... "Say it," Korthus commanded. One was the Talmori Ascendancy testing human resolve with a strike fleet of 40 vessels. The silence was absolute. 40 Talmori warships, a sector commander breathed. What was the outcome? Engagement duration, 27 minutes. Talmori casualties, 0 deaths, 11 ships disabled. Remainder forced to retreat. Human casualties, 0. Talmori. High Chancellor has issued an empire-wide mandate prohibiting any hostile action toward human space. 27 minutes, Korthus repeated. The Talmori Ascendancy, whose fleets have dominated 3 sectors for a generation, defeated in 27 minutes. And now humanity knows Talmori tactics as well, Thask added quietly. Add that to Korvax doctrine, Vryn energy systems, and 6 other species' military capabilities. Their database grows with every encounter. Defense Arbiter Sella stood abruptly. This is unprecedented. We're not facing a military threat. We're facing an evolutionary one. Every species that attacks them makes them more dangerous to everyone else. They're becoming militarily omniscient. Not omniscient, Trent corrected, but approaching comprehensive. At current rates, within 10 cycles, they'll have direct tactical data on every major military power in this sector. Within 20, they'll have indirect extrapolations for every minor power. And within 50 cycles, they'll be undefeatable, Korthus finished, by anyone, using any tactics we currently understand. The holographic display shifted, showing human territorial space, a relatively small cluster of systems, barely 6 colonized worlds. Insignificant compared to the Korvax Dominion's 200 systems, or the Talmori's 300, or the Vryn Collective's 400. But size no longer mattered. What are they doing with this knowledge? A sector commander asked. Are they expanding, preparing invasions, building war fleets? That's the disturbing part, Trent said, pulling up intelligence reports. They're not doing anything. Human territory hasn't expanded significantly. Their fleet numbers remain stable. They're not building dreadnoughts or mobilizing invasion forces. They're just... He gestured helplessly at the data. They're just there, watching, learning, waiting. Waiting for what? Sela demanded. For someone else to make a mistake, Thask said softly. For another species to underestimate them. To give them another opportunity to learn. They don't need to expand, Defense Arbiter. Every species that attacks them comes to them, delivers tactical intelligence directly to their doorstep. They've turned military conflict into an automated education system. Korthus deactivated the holographic display, plunging the command center into dimmer lighting. Recommendations. Immediate implementation of Protocol Sigma, Sela said. Official Dominion policy. Human space is designated as Exclusion Zone Alpha. No Korvax vessels enter without express authorization from this council. No provocations, no border incidents, no testing their resolve. We're retreating? A sector commander protested. The Korvax Dominion doesn't... The Korvax Dominion survives, Korthus interrupted sharply. And survival sometimes means recognizing when you've encountered something you can't defeat through conventional means. High Commander Thask, your assessment, can humanity be defeated? Thask considered the question carefully. Not through military action, Supreme Admiral. Every battle strengthens them. Not through technological development. They'll analyze and counter whatever we create. Not through intelligence gathering. Observing them gives them information about our observation methods. He paused. Perhaps through diplomacy, through trade, through peaceful coexistence. But through war? He shook his head. No, Supreme Admiral. Humanity cannot be defeated through war, because they've turned war itself into their greatest weapon. Korthus nodded slowly. Then we choose not to fight. Protocol Sigma is approved. Notify all fleet elements, all border patrols, all sector commands. Human space is now off limits. As the sector commanders filed out to implement the new protocol, Trent approached Thask. Hi, Commander, a question. When Captain Chen let you retreat, did she say anything else? Anything that might help us understand what humanity wants? Thask recalled that final conversation, Chen's calm voice explaining humanity's nature. She said that every species that fights humanity makes them stronger, that every encounter adds to their knowledge base. She said— He paused, remembering the precise words. She said humanity doesn't break. They learn, and what they learn, they never forget. A warning, Trent mused. No, Thask corrected. An explanation. She wasn't threatening us. She was explaining reality. The way you might explain gravity to someone who doesn't understand why they can't fly. It wasn't personal. It wasn't even hostile. It was just true. And that's what makes them so dangerous, Trent said quietly. They don't hate us. They don't fear us. They just learn from us. Clinical, efficient, permanent. Thask watched the sector commanders disperse, carrying orders that would reshape Korvac's military doctrine for generations. Science Marshal, do you think other species will make the same choice we did? Will they recognize humanity's nature and choose peace? Trent considered the question. Some will, the smart ones, the ones who value survival over pride. He gestured at the now empty holographic display. But others? The Shara warlords? The Nexus Compact? The Free Marauders? They'll see humanity's small territory and assume weakness. They'll attack, and they'll learn the same lesson we did, and make humanity stronger in the process. Exactly. Every arrogant empire, every overconfident warlord, every species that thinks this time will be different, they'll all become teachers in humanity's military academy, whether they want to or not. Thask moved toward the exit, then paused. Marshal Trent, when you write your official analysis of the New Providence engagement, include this. Humanity's greatest weapon isn't their combat learning integration system. It's their patience. They don't need to conquer the galaxy. They just need to wait for the galaxy to come to them. One fleet at a time, one lesson at a time. Until every species knows better than to test them. Yes, Thask said. And by then, they won't be a small collection of colonies anymore. They'll be the most comprehensively educated military force in galactic history, taught by every enemy who ever underestimated them. He left the command center, his thoughts heavy with realization. The Third Fleet had departed for New Providence with a plan to break humanity quickly. They'd returned with something far more valuable and far more dangerous, the knowledge that humanity couldn't be broken at all. The Korvacs would survive. They would adapt. They would choose peace. But somewhere in the galaxy, another species was making the same calculations the Korvacs had made, studying humanity's small territory, analyzing their primitive technology, formulating their own plan for quick victory. And when they attacked, humanity would be waiting, patient, calm, ready to learn. Far above New Providence, Captain Sarah Chen stood on the observation deck of the UNS Resolute, watching the stars. Behind her, Lieutenant Rivera approached with a data pad. Captain, intelligence reports 15 new alien fleets have been detected staging near various border regions. Long-range analysis suggests multiple species are considering testing human resolve. Chen didn't turn from the viewport. Let me guess. They've all studied the Korvacs engagement and decided they can do better. Yes, Captain. The consensus seems to be that the Korvacs were simply incompetent. Then they'll learn differently. Chen finally turned to face Rivera. How many species are represented in our tactical database now? 11, Captain, with detailed combat data on 8 of them. Good. By this time next year? Rivera smiled slightly. At current rates? 23 species, Captain. Maybe 25 if we're lucky. If we're lucky? Chen repeated, almost amused. Most species would consider being attacked by 25 different alien empires to be unlucky, Marcus. Most species don't learn as fast as we do, Captain. Chen returned her gaze to the stars. to the vast darkness filled with empires and warlords and conquerors, all of them making calculations, all of them planning their campaigns, all of them certain they would be different. You know what the real tragedy is, Marcus? Every one of them could choose peace, could choose trade, cooperation, coexistence. We'd teach them voluntarily, share technology, exchange knowledge, build something better together. But they won't. No, they'll choose war because they see our small territory and think we're weak, because they believe their own propaganda about alien superiority, because they can't imagine that a species could weaponize learning itself. She sighed. And so they'll attack, and they'll teach us, and they'll retreat, and we'll be stronger for it. The Korvax plan didn't survive contact, Rivera observed. No plan survives contact with us, Marcus. That's the point. That's the lesson every species learns eventually. Chen turned toward the corridor leading back to the bridge. Come on, let's get back to work. Something tells me we'll have more visitors soon. Students, Captain? Chen smiled, a thin, knowing smile that carried the weight of humanity's patient certainty. Everyone who fights us is a student, Marcus, whether they want to be or not. She walked away, leaving Rivera alone on the observation deck. He looked out at the stars one more time, thinking about all those alien empires making their plans, calculating their odds, convincing themselves that humanity could be broken quickly. The Korvax had thought the same thing. So had the Talmori, so had 8 other species. And every single one of them had learned the same lesson. Humanity didn't break. They learned. They adapted. They improved. And they never, ever forgot. The age of alien dominance over human space was over. The age of humanity, patient, methodical, eternally learning humanity, had begun. And every empire that tested them would teach them how to be even stronger. What do you think about this clash between alien arrogance and human power? Share your thoughts below, and remember to like and subscribe for more HFY stories.